Hi guys, my name is Fabi and I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I was raised there and lived there until I was 12 years old, and I am fully fluent in both Spanish and English. Being bilingual is something I truly believe has really had an impact in how I live my day-to-day life, from getting a job to excelling in school to making connections in my community. And like I said, I was born in San Juan. San Juan is this beautiful place. It's the capital of Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, my whole family has been there for generations and generations. We have our own almost dialect. Yes, we speak Spanish, but it's so much more than that. We have our own slang. We have our own use of specific words. We have words that maybe mean different things in different forms of Spanish. While living there, I was brought up speaking that form of Spanish, even though it's not my first language. I was born in 1995 and I lived in Puerto Rico up until 2007. And all that time, yes, the primary language I spoke was Spanish. But the first language I learned was actually English. You see, my father's side of the family speaks predominantly English. And it's not because they were born in the United States or anything, or I'm half Puerto Rican. No, my whole family's from there. It's just that on my father's side, my grandfather was in the Air Force. And not only was he in the Air Force, he was actually born and raised in Brooklyn before moving out to Puerto Rico. So there was already that basis of my father and his siblings moving to all different countries, including the United States. And from there, they just developed their English skills and used them more than they used their Spanish. So, in Puerto Rico, it's not just Spanish that is spoken. It's also English. There could be French, there could be Chinese, everything. There's just as much diversity as there is here in the States. But there is a larger population of people who rather speak just Spanish than just English. As a child, I spent a lot of time in my paternal grandparents' home. My parents both worked a lot, and so my grandparents would occasionally come and pick me up from school. And it was always English. It wasn't, ay chica, ¿cómo estaba? No, it's like, how was school? It was very, very, very important to my parents that myself and my siblings, became bilingual. It was something so important. They knew this was something that was going to be of great use to us one day. So when I was with my grandparents, they had basic cable. Well, they had the premium cable too. So I spent a lot of time watching TV in English, a lot of PBS, TBS, all the good networks. And even as a toddler, my mom would tell me that I loved speaking Spanglish. Not just English, not just Spanish. I loved to mix my sentences and mix my words. So instead of saying, I want apple juice, I would say, yo quiero jugo de apple. It was always jugo de apple, or I want jugo de apple. It was always very mixed. When it came to asking my parents how they learned English, my father was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We were all born in the same hospital, in the same town. And well, shortly after my father was born, they moved to the United States because my grandfather got moved to another station. And my father developed English easier than he developed Spanish. It wasn't until he was around 11 or 12 that he moved back to Puerto Rico and actually struggled to learn Spanish. When it came to my mother was born and raised in Puerto Rico, lived her whole life there. And while she did have access to English in the schools, the school system, all the books were in English. So if you didn't already have a idea, a skill in English, you're going to struggle with it. So what she would do is she would go through the TV, she would go through music, she would write down lyrics, and she made it so that she was going to be able to speak it, to write it, to understand it. And to the point that when we moved to California, she took the initiative to take a class for adult English learners. And from there really started her career in education that she has today as a paraeducator. With my father, it's always been easy. With myself, English came naturally because I was constantly surrounded by it. For my mother, it was something so, I don't want to say overwhelming, but it was something so challenging, and she took this upon herself. Being bilingual was something that she really, really stressed for us. For myself, for my sister, for my brother. From the beginning, she wanted us to be able to speak both languages. When we moved to California, we were bilingual, but we were starting to forget our native language of Spanish. And this is what she didn't want to happen. So what happened was the focus shifted. Spanish now became the priority. In the house, we did not speak English. We speak Spanish. And they made this a point. My parents made this a point that by encouraging us to continue speaking Spanish, continue speaking English, they enabled us to gain these skills, to even give us a leg up when applying for jobs, applying for schools, even learning in school. Once we had Spanish and English down, they told us there was nothing we couldn't do. Being bilingual has been such a huge part of my life and in my education and in my career that I believe it's important for all children to at least learn one other language, whether it's their native language or whether it's a new language. When my brother, my sister, and I, we were all in high school, we all took French. My sister went to the highest level and was even slightly fluent in it, but without practice, it faded away. Being bilingual is the best advantage your children will have.